And Andrea.
Phyllis and Andrea. Oh, we got a
Welcome, everyone.
full crew, yeah.
Hey, everyone. All right, so first thing today is just a call to order. We have to do roll calls. We have some people on Zoom. So first in person, Richard Smith present.
Jessica Cannon present.
Valjean Estes present.
Don Sullivan present.
Phyllis, I think you're on mute, but Andrea Bennett present.
Yeah, Philip, there's Phyllis.
Oh, still on mute.
We couldn't hear you, Phyllis, but we see you.
All right, we'll note that Phyllis Goodson is present.
PJ.
Okay. PJ Klein is also should be present.
Yeah, what we spoke earlier.
Okay. All right, first action business is just approval of the August minutes. Do we have any comments or concerns about the August minutes before we approve them? Not hearing any, okay, August minutes are approved. Move on to item number 1, guest speaker Tim Armstrong with National Weather Service.
Yeah, so I think you guys are in for a bit of a treat today. Tim Armstrong is a forecaster locally here with the National Weather Service. I came across Tim actually at my church when he was giving a talk to the membership of our church about weather data that they collect here locally and its impact on the climate. And since then, he's willing to come in and talk to our city leadership on the data that they collect here. And I thought it's not necessarily a direct connection, but it certainly is an appropriate topic of conversation. And so I invited Tim to see if he would be willing to come to talk to this group and share some of the same information he shared with city leadership. And so, Tim, welcome and thank you for coming to join us today.
I appreciate the opportunity, certainly. And I want to say I'm very gratified to hear that the city has a committee looking into green energy. And this talk, at least on my end, is being brought to you by solar power. Even on a largely cloudy day, we're making 2,400 watts here at my house. So it's certainly a great fit. I'm very happy to be able to speak to you all. But I have a presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get the presentation started here. Okay.
We got it, Tim. Thanks.
Okay. Let me get the, let's see, slideshow from beginning. Okay. Is that full screen for everyone, I hope?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay, very good. So as the introduction said there, I am one of the meteorologists at the National Weather Service office here in Wilmington. And in addition to our 7-day forecast, public marine aviation you may be aware of, we are responsible for flash flood warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings. We work in concert with the National Hurricane Center to issue tropical storm and hurricane warnings where necessary, and also in partnership with the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, for severe thunderstorm and tornado watches. So it's a collaborative effort with a lot of local and national groups to do our forecasts. One part you may not be aware of, and this is actually my responsibility, is we also collect climate data from Wilmington and several surrounding cities and ensure that data is of high quality. We do quality control on that, and also ensure that it is archived properly with the state climate offices in North and South Carolina, and also with the National Centers for Environmental Information up in Asheville, sort of the worldwide repository for climate data, both from city, ground-based stations, also satellite, radar, all sorts of weather information goes to live there where it's accessible to researchers and to the public. So that's one of the areas that my responsibility is in. But I wanted to speak to you today about climate change in particular, what we're seeing here in Wilmington and also around the country and around the world. And a short outline of today's talk, we're going to look at temperatures, rainfall, sea level rise, and also hurricane activity. Obviously, 4 things that are very close to our hearts here in the Cape Fear area. And I don't know if we'll get to that last part there. That was for a different talk, but there's some extra slides at the end if there's any interest in that. But first of all, let's talk about climate change. Where is it coming from? And we'll start off with just a brief introduction to the greenhouse effect. You've probably heard this term, I'm certain, where these gases that are called greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxides, there's some other ones in there as well. Because of their physical structure, the shape of those molecules, as infrared heat radiation is attempting to exit the atmosphere to go back into space, those molecules literally absorb that heat and re-emit it back to the ground again. And so these greenhouse gases, as they build up in the atmosphere, are trapping more and more heat that would normally radiate out into the darkness, into the blackness of space. And you can see the graphs we have there that go back about 1,000 years for these various gases. And about 150 years ago, the graphs trend upward very sharply for all three of these gases, indicating that about the time that the Industrial Revolution started, humans realized, wow, there's some great energy sources here. Let's start using them. These gases, the waste gases from internal combustion engines and so forth, began building up in the atmosphere and trapping more heat and changing the climate. And a question I've gotten several times is, well, I know that these scientific machines that can measure down to the parts per million or parts per billion of these constituent gases in the atmosphere, those machines did not exist 100 or 1,000 years ago. Where on earth is this data coming from? It turns out if you go to permanent ice sheets on the planet, which there are still a few, Greenland and Antarctica mainly, and you look at cores that go deep, deep down into the ice, these are places that are so cold, the ice never melts. It just builds up year after year after year, forming ice sheets and glaciers. And trapped in between those little snowflakes that become, as it's pressed down into a solid block of ice, there are small bubbles of atmosphere trapped from thousands of years ago. And we have modern machines that are able to extract those and measure the gases in there. And we can see with very, very high certainty that these gases had very stable, low concentrations in the atmosphere up until about 150 years ago, at which point the changes began very quickly, and they are continuing to accelerate today. So we have literally, as a species, we have changed the atmospheric chemistry, physically made changes to the atmosphere. It's these trace gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides that are building up to levels that we really haven't seen at any point in humanity's history here. And you can see that some of the data here from 2023 anyway, that we were up 50% on carbon dioxide, 150% on methane. These gases continue to build up, and I don't really, I'm not a forecaster for this sort of thing, but I certainly don't see that that's going to turn around anytime soon, given the trajectories that the world seems to be on currently. So the impact of these changes in atmospheric chemistry is, of course, its first order impact is a change on atmospheric temperature. And we can see both globally and here in the United States, and even right here in Wilmington, that the trends in temperature have been upward over time. And for global temperatures and USA temperatures, you can see those graphs go back to 1880. Wilmington is very unique in that we began taking climate data records here in Wilmington in 1871 for rainfall and 1874 for temperatures. That's when the predecessor to the National Weather Service, the predecessor to the U.S. Weather Bureau, it was called the U.S. Army Signal Corps, actually began keeping records here. And we can be proud that in Wilmington anyway, we have the longest continuous period of climate records of any station in North or South Carolina. There are some stations that have data that goes back farther, but there are breaks of decades or multiple years in there. But for Wilmington anyway, we had the longest continuous record of climate data. So looking at it just on the bottom there, our local temperatures here in Wilmington, 4 of the hottest 5 years in history have occurred since 2018. And you can see we have 3 years where the average annual air temperature was 66.3. Last year was 66.0. So again, 4 of the 5 warmest years in history here in Wilmington have occurred just since 2018. So obviously we are seeing some changes that really don't have any precedence in the climate record. So for North Carolina as a whole, we're up about 2 degrees air temperature since 1900. Most of that change has occurred since 1980. The forecast looking out into the future, and this is data that it's required. It's still congressionally required, but I'm not sure what the future of it's going to be. There were these national climate change assessments done every several years that would give a sort of a scorecard where we're at and what the projections for the future are. And the data you're going to see presented here on the next few slides came from those studies, which I luckily archived at the office. I don't believe they're available on the globalchange.gov site anymore. But projections are another 1 to 4 degree Fahrenheit rise by 2050, with even larger rises possible by the end of the century. And of course, we're talking here about averages. When I say we're up about 2 degrees since 1900 or an additional rise of 1 to 4 degrees, that's looking at your average annual air temperature. That's computed just by taking every day's average, your high and low, you average those together to one number, then you average those out across the 365 days of the year to get an average for the entire year. So we're looking at changes in average temperature, but there are probably better ways to look at human impacts. And the way I want to show that is this little slide here. We've all played the game Connect Four, I'm sure, as a kid, or maybe with children or grandchildren. So you'll see the gray board there on the right side of the screen. Looks like a Connect Four board, but I'm using it here as sort of a graphing tool. So what we're looking at here is I took about a 2-week period back in August of 2022. And what you see on those little red checkers there are the daily high temperatures that we measured here in Wilmington for each of those days during that roughly 2-week period. And I'm going to have the computer sort these over into the Connect Four board, into the columns there with the temperatures on it. And you'll see an interesting little pattern develop here. So we're seeing the 90-degree day goes in the middle column, the 94 goes up a little bit higher. And just give this a couple seconds to finish, and I think you'll see something very interesting happen. So if anyone's ever worked with data from natural data sets, whether it's medical or from the natural world, population studies, or in this case, temperatures, you probably are familiar with a shape called the bell curve or a normal distribution. So obviously with just 2 weeks of data, there's some, you see the individual observations very well here, but in general, you can tell by looking at this here that most of the days in August, or this particular August here, we had highs in the upper 80s to lower 90s. You had a few days that were higher. I see one that was 98. We had a few days that were lower. I see one where the high was only 80. But looking at this, you get a good idea what the mean is and what the spread is around that. If someone had never been to Wilmington before and you were trying to describe what the mid-August climate might be in Wilmington and you showed them this, they would have a good idea what to expect. And the fact they don't see any 110s and they don't see any 60s tells them sort of like, what the spread is within that there. So this is just from a 2-week period. If we do this over, say, a period that spans multiple decades, and this is, for example, the last 2 decades of complete summer data for Wilmington, we get a graph like this here. This is the summer temperatures from 2004 through 2024 for Wilmington. And the center of that bell curve there is the average annual summer high temperature for us, which is 88.7 degrees. That's data we collected right here in Wilmington over that 2-decade period. You can see that there are some that go quite a bit higher, over 100. There's some days where it was only in the 70s or even a few in the upper 60s for highs, but those are much, much rarer. So this is a complete distribution of temperatures over the summer season in Wilmington. Let's compare this, though, with data we collected way back early in Wilmington's climate history, let's say the last 2 decades of the 1800s. And look at the differences there. We still have a bell curve, but notice the entire bell curve for the older data, the late 1800s, is shifted several degrees in the cooler direction compared to what we see today. That is climate change right there in a single graphic. What you're looking at is the change in the observed temperature in Wilmington over that basically 100 to 20, 130 year period. That's the climate change we've seen in Wilmington right there. The average summer high temperature, which was roughly 86, is now roughly 89 degrees. So again, when I show this during talks, people might say, well, I don't dress any differently when the high is 86 versus 89. What's the big deal about climate change? And I really can't say you're wrong about that. I don't dress differently either. I know in the back of my head, the air conditioner is running a little harder. It's maybe evaporating water a little faster out of my gardens. I have to water the plants more often. But what's the big deal about this? The big deal is not the average. It's what happens at the extremes. So let's look at how often 95-degree days happen in Wilmington. For today's climate, about 10% of summer days reach 95 degrees or warmer here in Wilmington. Compare that to that late 1800s data where it only happened about 4% of the time. That difference is a 2.5 times difference. It is now 2.5 times more likely to hit 95 degrees in today's Wilmington summer climate than it was 130 years ago. So that's pretty impactful. 95 degrees is a day I don't really feel like mowing grass. I don't feel like, maybe taking a walk around the neighborhood with my family. It's pretty uncomfortable out there. Well, what about 100 degrees? Still, fortunately, very, very rare. But now in today's climate, it's 5 times more likely to hit 100 degrees than it was in the late 1800s in Wilmington as a consequence of climate change. 100 degrees, especially with humidity, is absolutely dangerous. You actually can have serious health impacts from 100-degree heat. And it happens much more frequently now than it did 130 years ago. Now, at the very, very far end of this graph here, where it sort of tails off down to 0 probability, the highest temperature we've ever seen in Wilmington's history was 104. That's happened exactly one time. It was June of 1952, I believe. As this graph continues with climate change in the future to push farther and farther right on this graphic here, 104 won't be a once in a city's lifetime experience. It will occur more and more often. And temperatures that aren't even physically possible in today's climate may become possible in the future. 105, 106, 107. Those are temperatures that they've seen inland, Columbia, Florence, South Carolina. I think even Fayetteville, North Carolina has been to 110 before. But our climate here has never supported that. But it certainly may in the future as climate change continues. Now, this is impactful for a lot of reasons, not just the impacts on human health. Already, the United States averages about 600 fatalities a year due to heat exposure from summer heat. Think about our physical infrastructure, the roads, the bridges around town. When engineers design structures such as bridges and roads and sidewalks and so forth, they look at what historically has happened with temperatures and rainfall and wind speeds when they're designing these structures. What happens when you far exceed these thresholds? We can look up in the Pacific Northwest back in that summer or June 2021 heat wave where Portland and Seattle and even Vancouver in British Columbia had temperatures 15 to 20 degrees hotter than ever experienced before. Their roads were not designed for such heat, and they didn't build the expansion joints for that sort of heat. And so their roads literally produced mountains from overexpansion, damaged cars. I'm not sure if anyone was injured by that, but certainly I saw a video at the time of cars that were being destroyed trying to cross these 2 and 3 foot walls of concrete that welled up in the middle of the highway. So certainly a lot of big impacts can occur from that. Think of utilities also, power and water utilities. Already we hear in some parts of the country about power issues that occur during heat waves. Power distribution. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'll continue. So if power issues can occur from, say, everyone's air conditioner running on 105 or 106-degree day, that's something to look at in the future as well that could occur with climate change as the climate begins to outpace what our engineered society was built to be able to furnish at the time. So certainly a lot of effects that could become much, much more frequent and harmful to human society in the future from climate change. There are other follow-on impacts as well to agriculture. Obviously, plants don't enjoy being outside in 105-degree heat any more than humans do. There's more direct heat stress to the plants, but also higher evaporation rates. Think about the way a hairdryer works. You heat the air, it evaporates water at a much faster rate. And so that's exactly what would happen with climate change as well, is even if your rainfall remained constant, you will evaporate the water at a faster rate, which could produce issues for agriculture in the area. Also, expanding range of undesired insects. I've read about tropical and subtropical insects that are able to survive the winters due to warmer winter temperatures and become issues for agriculture there as well. Marine heat waves. Luckily, we have not experienced this here yet locally, but I know I think it was last summer in Florida, they had in the Florida Keys, water temperatures go well into the 90s, close to 100 degrees, and it destroys some of their tropical, the reefs under the water and had impacts on their fish and bird populations. So marine heat waves are a consequence also of climate change as we go forward in this. Changing gears to rainfall, this is sort of a second order effect here from climate change. For Wilmington, we average about 60 inches of rain a year. Generally, it's evenly distributed throughout the year. Our spring and our fall tend to be a little bit drier than our summers and our winters, but we have a very, very evenly distributed rainfall pattern compared to most of the planet, actually. Long rainfall across the eastern United States has been fairly stable. We have seen small increases in rainfall, maybe 5% or so at some stations over the past 100 years, but nothing really significant. As we go forward toward the end of the century, though, by the year 2100, there could be an additional 5 to 10% increase in annual rainfall totals. But again, you got to counter that with the increased evaporation from warmer air to see if it really makes a big difference there. The annual totals may not change, but one thing that is changing is rainfall intensity. And for those of us who have lived here in Wilmington for a few decades, I've been here almost 25 years now. I have been here for many of the heaviest rainfall events in Wilmington's history. There is a statistical atlas that NOAA has published. NOAA is the parent agency for the National Weather Service. This is called NOAA Atlas 14. It's an average rainfall return atlas for thousands of points around the country. For Wilmington, for example, this is a little excerpt from the data table here. Let's say I'm designing a parking lot and I need to make sure that my drainage can keep up with the amount of rain expected to fall during a heavy thunderstorm like we had yesterday. So I can look at this here and say that, okay, I need to design this so that in 1 hour, every 10 years, it can drain away 3.08 inches of rainfall in that 1 hour period. Or if I want to design it even more robustly, our 50-year, every 50 years, you would expect 4.08 inches of rain to fall in a 1 hour period in Wilmington. And of course, this data differs for various places around the country. This is based on historic data, so that maybe doesn't totally encompass the climate that we see here in Wilmington today. So there is a new extension to this where we actually are looking at climate change, taking this into effect, and predict by the year 2065, for example, these average rainfall return intervals, you'll see the numbers have increased quite a bit. In most cases, about a 10 to 20% increase in rainfall. The reason for this is quite simple, actually. As the air warms, it holds more moisture than cooler air. And that's really one of the basic ways that meteorology works. As air rises and cools, you get clouds and rainfalls out of it. Well, as air warms, it can hold more and more water. So a summer thunderstorm that occurs on a 90-degree day can drop a certain amount of rain. A summer thunderstorm that occurs on a 95-degree day, because the air can actually absorb and hold more water in it, can dump even heavier rain. And that's something we are expecting with climate change, is that the warmer atmosphere holding more water means that thunderstorms, it means that tropical cyclones, hurricanes, for example, can dump much heavier rain than they did in the previous climate. And there's a website there with sort of a preview copy of this if you want to go check this climate change precipitation atlas out. It's on the North Carolina Institute for Climate Studies, ncics.org, which has a lot of really good information on it there. But if we look at what's been happening here in Wilmington, I mentioned I've been.
Tim,
Yes.
I had a quick question for you on that last graph, on the last charts. Yeah. Do these rainfall totals, do they include like hurricane events, which would skew that data a little bit? Do they include those, or do those get filtered out? I can see the case for either, where it does, as we're making the argument about climate change, the hurricane intensity will increase, so it is kind of relevant to here, but it also, I can see the argument for taking it out because it's kind of these singular natural disasters and not kind of typical rainfall. So
they are included in here, but they are obviously extreme events that would exceed some of these values in a lot of cases here. Another thing I want to mention is this NOAA Atlas 14 was created decades ago. I think in the 1980s is when the first version of this came out. And so it's really keyed on that 1950 through 1980 timeframe. There's been a few updates to it since then, but on this next slide, I want to show this one right here, that 1950 to 1980 climate isn't really applicable to Wilmington anymore. It's not necessarily the climate we live in. For example, for Wilmington's daily rainfall, over 8 inches. So we're looking at, let's say, the heaviest rainfall days in Wilmington's history. We've only had 6 of those in all of history here, where 8 inches of rain has fallen in a single calendar day. And if you look at this here, since 1871, that's 154 years of data, I believe. 5 of those 6 have occurred since 1999. So we're basically looking at 5 of the 6 heaviest rainfall events have occurred in the last 20% of our town's climate record, which is really a statistical anomaly. In fact, if we weren't having climate change, I would say it's almost impossible. It would be very, very unlikely to have so many of your heaviest events occur in such a short period of time with so little else on the rest of the climate record there. So this is one more example where we can tell that the climate that existed in the 1800s and most of the 1900s does not exist anymore. We are living in a new regime now where these extremely heavy rainfall events, due to tropical storms or not, just from regular low pressure systems or passing thunderstorms, this is our new climate already here now. Climate change is not some far off thing that's going to be affecting people generations down the road. We are literally living in an altered climate right now where temperatures and rainfall and so forth don't match what we collected historically. So one more aspect of this, we could call this a third order effect, I guess you could say, of climate change, is sea level rise. This is a graph here of data. This is sort of a global average here. So looking at all the tide stations around the planet from every continent, we're looking at satellite data more recently, since satellites have been up in space the past 40 years or so. reflecting radar signals off the ocean to measure the exact height down to centimeter accuracy. It matches the the tide gauge data very well. And we see a very, very continuing upward trend in sea levels globally. We see that locally as well. We have a tide station on the Cape Fear River at downtown Wilmington, which is pretty much at sea level. And also at Wrightsville Beach, we have a tide gauge there as well. This sea level rise there's two causes really. One is direct melting of ice from glaciers and ice caps. That's about 2/3 of what you're seeing there is literally ice that was perched up on land or on mountains somewhere. As that ice melts to water and runs downhill into the ocean, it directly raises ocean levels just by filling the oceans up to levels they weren't in before. About 1/3 of what you're seeing there is actually thermal expansion of the ocean. As the ocean itself, which of course touches the atmosphere, absorbs heat from the atmosphere, it's the average temperature of the ocean is rising. And so if you remember physics from high school, a warmer liquid will usually expand, take up more room. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. As the ocean is absorbing heat from the atmosphere, it is literally expanding volumetrically and rising its level as well. That's believed to be about 1/3 of the rise that we've seen here. Since 1900, we were up about roughly 9 inches, and since the year 2000, about 4 inches. So you can see that the trend is not just a steady rising trend; it's an accelerating rising trend, where almost half of the rise that we've seen since 1900 has really occurred just in the past 25 years. And this is data that on a global scale is also being replicated here at a local scale with what we're seeing here in Wilmington. If we look at projections into the future here, and this graph goes through about 2050, there's the potential for an additional 10 to 12 inches of rise by 2050. That's a tremendously increased rate above what we've seen before. And I know that we hear a lot about coastal flooding, not just at downtown Wilmington, but also at the beaches during storms or even just your astronomical high tides. Water levels that currently here in 2025 have about a 1 in 100% or 1 in 100 chance of being reached. So 1% annual exceedance threshold. By the year 2100, they could be 30 to 100 times more likely to occur. So coastal property certainly will be impacted very severely. And it doesn't even take a storm in some cases, just a big full moon high tide, which we are expecting 2 periods, one in October, one in November, where I think we're going to hear about some pretty heavy coastal flooding at the beaches and along the river downtown, just from full moons that we're expecting later this fall. But the last thing I want to mention is changes in hurricanes. If there is one piece of good news, it's that we have not, over the period of time, we have good tropical cyclone records for the Atlantic Ocean and for the Cape Fear area. We have not seen a tremendous increase overall in the number of hurricanes. In fact, there are some projections in the future saying that Atlantic tropical activity could decrease by up to 15%. Not all of our forecast models show that, but the idea is that wind shear, that's the change in wind direction and wind speed with height off the surface, could increase across the areas that are very prone to get hurricanes. So the total number of storms could actually decrease in the Atlantic Ocean. It's not all good news though, because when there are tropical storms and hurricanes, the warmer atmosphere is certainly going to support heavier rainfall. So the trends in rainfall are going to continue, where a tropical storm or a hurricane will have much heightened chances of producing heavy rainfall and also coastal flooding, even if there are fewer of those storms around overall. Storm surge inundation, because of sea level rise, if we get that multi-foot increase in sea level rise, it would not take much of a hurricane or a tropical storm to produce very impactful coastal flooding, affecting our beaches and our river communities in the area. And just as a way to sort of showcase that here, we had tide records that go back, into the 1950s and even before for both Wrightsville Beach and for downtown Wilmington on the river. And you can see Hurricane Hazel, the highest stage ever recorded at Wrightsville Beach, 16 feet was the water level there, October 1954. So there's some names on here you would expect to see: Hazel, Fran, Florence. Those are some big names that are no surprise at all. But then you might look at some of these and be like, Cape Fear River at Wilmington, 9 feet, and Isaias? I hardly remember that storm. Or maybe Ian in September 2022 shows up as the number 4 highest level at Wrightsville Beach, the number 5 at on the Cape Fear River downtown. How could such a storm that maybe I don't think of as a big powerful hurricane, how did it produce such high water? It's that sea level rise, just that background creeping up of the base tide level, that means that it doesn't take a powerful hurricane people talk about for years later to produce very impactful coastal flooding that damages property and damages roads and infrastructure. So we're already seeing some of this take place, I believe, where due to sea level rise, that coastal flooding produced by hurricanes becomes more and more of an issue. And here's just some recent photos showing some of the coastal flooding around the area, and just sort of to plant a seed in the back of your head there. Imagine both of these pictures here with 12-inch higher tides by the year 2050. People who barely had water in their garage, now they've got water knocking the walls out of their first floor. And some of these cars here that maybe just had a few inches of water going underneath them during the tidal surge, now they've got water in the vehicles damaging them. So the amount of property damage goes up tremendously with each additional inch of rise during these impactful weather events. So just sort of to summarize all we've talked about here, a warmer and a wetter Wilmington is what we're expecting in the years ahead. If I had to sort of sum this entire talk up, I would say that Wilmington of the year 2050 to 2075 is going to look and feel a lot like modern day Mobile, Alabama, Biloxi, Mississippi, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The central Gulf Coast climate is essentially what we're going to see coming here to Wilmington. It doesn't mean, obviously, that it's the end of the world. Sometimes you hear some sort of apocalyptic statements about climate change. I can assure you, people live in Mobile, Biloxi, and Baton Rouge right now, but those cities maybe were designed for a different climate with the building codes, construction codes, how the bridges and the roads are built. So those are things that Wilmington will have to grasp with in the years ahead, ensuring that we can maintain infrastructure that lives up to the standards of the new climate we'll be in here. It's certain that greenhouse gases will continue to accumulate in Earth's atmosphere. I don't really see how that's going to reverse anytime soon. It's certain that sea level rise will continue worsening the coastal flooding impacts that we are already seeing. Temperatures will continue to rise, which will make extreme heat more common. It's very likely that our rainfall intensity, that is how heavy the rain is falling during a rainstorm, the intensity will increase, which will cause more severe freshwater flooding. And then I mentioned earlier about some things that we're less certain on. Atlantic hurricane and the number of hurricanes and the number of landfalls could decrease slightly in the future, but it's uncertain about that. And then also the drought aspect. Warmer temperatures, of course, will evaporate water at a faster rate. So even if rainfall were to remain perfectly steady, it is possible drought would occur with more frequency and more regularity in the years ahead. So that is my talk in a nutshell, and I'll be very, very happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about that.
Tim, one question I have is, what is your motivation for this presentation? Like, is it just a passion project for you? Is this kind of part of your job? Is it, are you advocating for better infrastructure design going forward? Kind of just tell us what the the takeaway is. Obviously the data on climate change and the impacts that are being forecasted. But I'm curious, kind of what you'd personally like to see out of this presentation, or what the goal is.
Yeah, basically, I'm very proud of the fact that Wilmington has such a long and robust period of climate records that goes back into the 1870s. And so we can draw conclusions from that, where we're already seeing climate change that is affecting the current day Wilmington, Cape Fear area residents, and will likely continue into the future. So my job as a meteorologist, I look out to about 7 days in the future, and that's the end of the line as far as my day-to-day job. But we do have obviously a lot of experts in the field that, as climatologists, their job is to look out months and years and decades into the future, looking at the current data that folks like myself collect. They run models that look out into the future. And so part of what I like to do is to take their work based on the data that I have collected here and try to share that with folks that maybe have an interest in it or are in positions where they can help to make effective policy based on some of the data that's out there. So that's sort of my motivation here, is just to say there's a wealth of information, high quality, peer-reviewed information about climate change and its impacts, not just here, but around the world. And I'd like to have some role in helping to disseminate that to people who are interested and can do good things with it.
I have two follow-up questions for you. The first is there something that you feel that we as a committee can do to help you spread this kind of information, like you said, disseminate this information? Is there something that you see as a committee that we could assist with? And my second follow-up question is, you said that you pointed out that Wilmington has such good, long, continuous weather data. as much as you're allowed to, I'm asking if you foresee, if you have concerns about that data being maintained going forward in the next, say, 3 years.
As far as I can tell with the second question there, I don't see any immediate threats to the routine collection, quality control, and archiving of that data. I don't see anything that's going to affect that in the future. I'm still 100% confident, just as much as I was, say, a year or two ago, in the ability for the National Weather Service, not just locally, but around the country, to collect high quality data and maintain its availability in an unaltered state. So no concern about that as things stand right now anyway. The other part of the question was about how can the committee sort of help to publicize, I guess, or take the information I've given here. Everything I do is and everything that the National Weather Service does is absolutely public domain. You can take anything. I can give you the presentation or any of the base data behind it, and you're absolutely free to do anything you'd like with it. There's no copyrights or strings attached to it. And I would be happy to speak to any other groups that you know of that maybe could benefit from sort of an expert look at the data that's been collected and the projections for the future.
Thank you. And Dave, you said that he's already given this presentation to city leadership, right?
Yes, he has. And there may be more. Tim and I have spoken briefly about potentially expanding that to more of the employee population. We just hadn't taken that step yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess Dave, in relation to that, I know we're in the process or about to begin our update to our comprehensive plan for the city, as well as, we've recently received, been awarded this Resilient Coastal Communities grant that I know it's going to be kind of a across department effort, and wondering if this kind of information is, and obviously it's available, Tim, as you mentioned, it's publicly available, but
Bring it to the forefront.
are these going to be part of planning considerations as we move forward?
Sure.
And has that part of that, those groups, I imagine, have been part of the EMT or city leadership briefings in the previous.
Anyone else on the call have questions, comments?
I just wanted to say thank you, Tim, for coming in and doing this presentation today. It is really, I don't know if refreshing is the right word for it, but I feel so much of the conversations around all of the topics that we've been working on for so long have been more about language and, like just understanding how to best position everything, and just to come back to straight facts, evidence, information, like the pride in Wilmington for having the longest continuous record of this information, and that we are, part of this group of like stewarding that forward. I really appreciated it today. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. I was very happy last week. I got to share a lot of this data with the Cape Fear Museum. They're actually in the process of building a new sort of natural environment and weather and climate exhibit that's going to be in the new museum, I believe, next year. And so look for some of the same data to show up there.
Excellent.
Anybody else? Okay, I just wanted to somewhat echo what Andrea said, but Tim, I want to express my appreciation, both from the committee, but also on a personal level, that you're kind of fighting the good fight here and you're continuing to spread this information. I think it is, I find it terrifying, but it was terrifying when I learned about it when I was at university 20 years ago, and it hasn't gotten any less terrifying since then. But I do find it very impactful that the local data that you're able to provide, I think brings a real focus to it and a real reality to it for local community members, local leadership. I think the fact that we can show these shifts occurring not on a global scale but on a local scale, it's much easier to get someone to care about the fisheries in their backyard, or their beach house, or their riverfront property, or their relatives that are susceptible to heat risk. here in the local area than it is to say, you know, well, what's gonna happen to the glaciers in Greenland or the ice caps in Iceland. So I think that's very impactful and very helpful. And I just applaud you for your work and urge you to keep it up and really appreciate your time you know, I think our ability to help in a committee is probably pretty limited just based on what our mandate is and our focus on the green energy aspect of this versus the climate and the carbon aspect of it. But if there is anything that you think of that we may be able to assist with or collaborate with you on, please let us know, and you know, we'd be happy to have that discussion. Otherwise, I just thank you very much for your time and for the information. It was super helpful and really moving, in my opinion.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right.
Thanks, Tim. We appreciate your time. I'll be in touch.
Okay, very good. Have a good day. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tim. All right, so moving on to item number 2, we have some updates from David.
Sure, yeah, just a number of updates since we last met. At that last meeting, you all made the recommendation for us to move forward with developing a scope of work towards energy efficiency and energy audits of facilities. I've been gathering that information, some best practices and scope of work examples from some of my colleagues around the state, and still pulling that information together. You know, and you know, there have certainly been some good examples of that you know I've been able to pull together for developing that scope, as well as trying to get an idea of kind of what those costs might be. Obviously, a range of costs depending on size of cities and how detailed those scope of works become. But I think for, you know, we're looking for, we'll have a budget recommendation that perhaps we can put forward in the next budget cycle. So I continue to work on that, but yeah.
From any of the examples that you've been able to gather so far from your coworkers or your colleagues, does anyone have an example of where they had like a study done and then they've actually done the like measurement? They implemented some of the measures and they actually have the measurement and verification on the back end to show that like, look, this paid for itself, you know, it ended up saving the city money rather than costing money. Or are there any case studies of that we can utilize to show, you know, kind of the efficacy of it?
I don't have that info yet.
Okay.
Can certainly
Sure.
explore that as well. Yeah,
Sure.
just some case studies, M&V examples.
Yeah, it'd just be
Yep.
great. Like I just was wondering, you know, if one of our local cities had done something where we could actually kind of show that, you know, hey, this ended up being a net positive, you know, as far as the financials for the city, that would be.
Anytime that we can.
Is it me or did we lose the audio of?
Yeah, I lost it.
Yeah, it's been cutting in and out for me the whole time, so I don't know if.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like they're frozen now.
Me too.
Does anybody want to just shoot them a text or an email? It was fine for me until just now.
Mm-hmm. Phyllis, I'm not sure what's going on with your audio, but I still can't hear you. I saw you talk. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder what we're like to them. I wonder if they can hear us. Out in the ether.
Okay.
I've seen outages at my work company today for Google Meet, but
Oh,
I don't know if it's expanding.
Mhm.
Sean, are you texting Richard?
No, I
Yeah.
can
I
try
was, I was looking to see if I don't think I had some issue having my new phone. I don't think I had it on my phone anymore.
and try. Hold on. Wow.
I just sent David Ingram an email. I don't have anybody's phone numbers. We'll see what reaches them first.
They're either hearing us or have no. I mean, they've got to know that we're not. Either we're silent or and frozen, or they're hearing us talk.
Or we just look very intensely listening to what's going on in the room. Oh, okay. He said we are aware and trying to resolve the IT issues. Standby.
Is my audio any better?
there it is. Yep.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks. Disconnecting and reconnecting helped. And I had sent Dave Mays a text as well.
Well, that was good talk.
It was.
Oh,
It was
no.
like old school, just getting back to basics.
Yeah, well, it's cool to see. I've seen talks like that a lot, but it was cool to see Wilmington information on there, specifically for us.
Right?
It'd be great if one of the local TV stations on a slow news day would pick up something like that and be able to show local pictures and things like that. It'd really make a big impact.
Well,
would.
the biggest concern I have is with this was it was a whole bunch of, okay, here's the data, and I'm not asking Tim to do anything differently, but it was, okay, here's the data, here's the problem. What do you do about it? And obviously we've talked about it as a committee, like we know we can only do so much within our own little confine. But I don't know. I was just thinking about this the other day. This is year 5. And I know we've made change, but it's not. It doesn't overcome the curve that we've seen.
Yeah. No. And then even if we use kind of some of the stuff he presented and for the planning purposes, like David was saying, we still have to, you almost have to go further, not just into the immediate, or not immediate, but the impacts he showed into other effects, down the line. Plan for those. Like, I don't know how it will affect fishing, how it will affect tourism, keep on going. Which is hard to calculate or figure out. Well, it's good that hopefully this EV or the energy efficiency stuff will move forward. That's been definitely slow, I think. But I guess getting the new building didn't help speed things up.
I am glad that he presented to the, because that's what he said, right? Was that he presented this to council, or that, or
Yeah,
was
he
it
did say
council?
that. He did.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because, a lot of times it's like, yeah, we understand the urgency. That's why we're volunteering our time and energy to to work on this, so it's good to know, if he's getting that same information that we're pretty familiar with at this point into that, like hopefully that helps spur some additional resources or approval of budget requests in the future, understanding the need. But we'll see.
Any, David, you're still working on it.
What was the second half of the agenda? Is it mostly updates? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One was about like the governor having some sort of energy group,
Mm.
clean energy group, 30 people. It's kind of, well, I guess it's different. He had that wind task force. I know at least one person's on there from the wind task force,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess more just for, I think a lot of it is like data centers and
Can you hear us, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Dave, you were in the middle of telling us any examples that we can use would be beneficial.
Yeah, and this is typical for us, especially when you're doing a budget request. So
Yeah.
the other half of that, not just how do you do the work, but what are the results, be a good thing. So
Yeah.
we'll take that suggestion and make sure that we incorporate that to what we're pulling together.
Yeah, so continuing to work on that scope, keep you all abreast of progress on that. Next update was just, a follow-up on legislation happening at the state level. That's, one of our goals as well, is to stay abreast of everything that's going on and related to energy, both here locally, but also at the state and federal level. So latest development since our last meeting was just the governor's establishment of this Clean Energy Policy Task Force. And I believe I sent you guys just the briefing information or public announcement about it. And I mean, my takeaway from it was, it's what their task is somewhat similar to y'all's task, is just to make recommendations back up to the governor in regard to what's happening in regard to clean energy within the state, and being able to respond to what's happening with Duke Energy, and as they announced their next plan to the Utility Commission, this Clean Energy Task Force is going to be, I'm sure, doing a deep dive into that plan and making recommendations back up to the governor. So
Dave, it seems like some of the overlay over that, I was just doing some brief reading, is these data centers and load and the politics of the Senate, the way they just changed the law and the interim reductions. Feels like there's a lot of moving parts behind that. I'm interested to know what the politics are.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of layers to it. And some of the talk I'm hearing is this, incredible increase in demand that the utility is predicting could actually be, a positive for development of clean energy, just in order to power and provide the electricity that all of these, new development requires. It's going to require energy coming from all sources, and to add a new natural gas plant on the line, that's a long-term, 10-year project to get, the pipeline, to get the supply, get the plant built. That's not even, tapping into the small nuclear reactor, modular reactor technology, which, is even further timeline to develop out. So, solar and wind are established just across the nation. I think solar and wind have made up, somewhere around 90% of the new energy being delivered to the grid. So this, not only here in North Carolina, but across the country, this increased demand for data centers, AI technology is really gonna, it's gonna be interesting to see how all of those things are powered. So I don't know, PJ, you've got a portfolio of facilities across the country and, large facilities. So how are y'all viewing some of the demand problems?
I mean, mostly through energy efficiency where we can. That was going to be my comment to supplement what you were talking about. Is energy efficiency has been around for years, right? Decades. It's something that's easily dispatchable, known technology, readily available. Unlike an SMR or even like you're talking about with natural gas pipeline extensions, I mean, energy efficiency projects can be dispatched tomorrow. I mean, some of this stuff is off the shelf. Some of it obviously has to be ordered, but I think that's something that I'm hoping the state continues to look at is not only energy efficiency, but the demand side management, regardless if it's reducing load during times of need or being able to supplement the generation through fixed assets like generators.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that's, while we continue to focus on that here, hopefully is that energy efficiency is going to be one of our most important tools for helping us reach our goals. So, yeah. But, yeah, I was just also, impressed with the diverse group that's been pulled together to represent that task force for the governor. So pretty diverse across industries, across a variety of folks being pulled in, both from nonprofits as well as, large corporations across the state. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of influence and recommendations they make at the state level here. Any other questions or input? Any other comments, or I don't know if you all had heard about it or gotten any additional information on it, but thought it was quite interesting new development at the state level. It's the first time that there's been a task force like that at the state level. If none, moving on to the next update. I guess it's been 2 weeks ago now. Myself and our fleet manager, John Fortune, who I see has joined us as well today, attended the North Carolina Sustainable Fleet Conference and Expo up in Winston-Salem. Was hosted by the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. And just provided a lot of breakout sessions in regard to new technologies and charging infrastructure, a variety of topics as far as in the breakout session, as well as they hosted a ride and drive event as well with a lot of the newer vehicles that are out there and available. Local governments, but anybody who's looking to electrify their fleet. So it was just a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about what's out there, make some good connections. I actually had another discussion up there with Tom Del Vicio from Duke Energy, who y'all remember came and spoke to us a couple months ago. So just a little bit more discussion with him in regard to the sites that we're looking at installing EV infrastructure, and need to reach back out with him again, just to schedule a follow-up call, just to continue to help us along that path with our fleet EV infrastructure. So, and yeah, interesting, this morning I just had one of our finance folks call us as they're, looking to further have fleet electrification as part of their budget considerations moving forward. So I'm going to be including him on our kind of tying into our next bullet item here, update on our fleet EV transition study. I've invited the finance representative to be able to join us on our biweekly calls with ICF on our fleet EV transition study.
And we,
Yeah.
I just want to recognize John Fortune. I think he was up there a day early to take a course on becoming a certified fleet manager, municipal fleet manager. Isn't that right, John? Maybe he's not listening, but anyway, John invested extra time at the conference to go through the coursework to become more invested in certified green fleet manager through the conference. So I just wanted to recognize his effort for doing that. And that'll hopefully pay off in benefits for us as we go through this transition. So.
Yeah, they had a number of examples up there of some types of vehicles we may be interested at some point. They had some pursuit rated police vehicles, which, our police department represents one of the largest parts of our fleet with, well over 300 vehicles or so. So, that could be down the road a bit as they're looking to get, vehicles they feel will meet the requirements, but certainly some examples of some of the other cities here in North Carolina utilizing those vehicles, as well as some of the new light duty pickup trucks, which are a big part of our fleet as well. So we were able to take a look at those, take them for a spin, get some good feedback and experience from some of the vehicles some of our other municipalities here within the state are already utilizing. So yeah, it was good experience. Came away with some good ideas that we can begin to take forward. Next update is just, we're continuing to move right along with our fleet EV transition study. We've got a call next week. They've done some preliminary sorting of the assets that we currently have in regard to looking at right sizing and identifying which vehicles may be being underutilized, looking at, the total annual mileage across our, for the last fiscal year for vehicles across the fleet, as well as looking at, total fuel usage as well. So we can begin to trim down and be able to identify which vehicles we may be able to surplus and begin to look at some models that could be easily replaced with current models that are current EV models that are out there and available. So again, that study is supposed to go through into early next year. I'm targeting February right now to update the group here as we progress and work through the various tasks that ICF is working on as part of that EV transition study. Questions? in that, in regard to where we are with that process?
I'm glad we able to go to the conference, get some latest and greatest info.
Yep, yeah, there was, it was a 2.5 day conference, so yeah, certainly there were some good attendance from across the state. Yeah, a lot of good progress being made by the various fleets, so we certainly had some good info to follow up on. And yeah, just the last bullet point here, last update. I believe, Rich, you had us add this to the agenda this week, so happy to say that there has been some communication with the county. I've been communicating with Madeline over there, the sustainability manager for New Hanover County, as kind of the next steps in the Soul Smart program involve some training for the department there that's responsible for inspection and actual permitting. So, you know, they've had a very busy start to their fiscal year, so kind of wanted to give them a little bit of time to adjust to their new budget and staffing before we kind of move these items forward. But she has had some discussion and with folks on their side in regard to the training needs to pursue the Soul Smart program. And I think they're actually, they're interested in getting, pursuing Soul Smart certification as well at the county level. So that was a positive as well. So there's some training also that needs to occur with some of our planning staff here. Some of the responsibilities in regard to, you know, zoning and that kind of thing fall within our staff. So I've had some discussion with folks on our side as well, and providing them the information. There's basically just some links that the staff can go to at their own convenience and go through the training session. So in order for us to get to that silver level of Soul Smart designation, it's just going to require these training steps, which should be easily achievable. And the next step above that is the gold certification, which may be a little bit further down the road, but you know, certainly very potentially doable as well. But just as a refresher, the Soul Smart is all about residential solar and making it easier, removing the red tape for being able to install solar on residential and or commercial properties. So we're working on that both from the city level as well as the county level. So as responsibilities fall on both parties. So we continue to progress, but getting all the ducks lined up in order to get that training part completed, you know, hopefully within these next few months or so.
For the next meeting, can you prepare us some information on the specifics of the Soul Smart Gold, like the difference between silver and gold?
Sure.
I just remember one of the council members asking, you know, if it would be possible for us to get to gold this year. And whether or not it is, you know, that's, well, we can look at that, but I just, in my mind, it would reflect positively on us if, you know, we took that to heart and we were able to say like, look, this was something that the city council brought to us as far as that you were interested in, and we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. At the next meeting, I can kind of show you where we are right now.
Sure.
Certified, at the certified level, and kind of each step.
Sure.
What we need to do.
Yeah. And even if we're not able to achieve that status, you know, by the next time I present to the committee, if we can lay them out a roadmap of, you know, hey, we looked into it and this is the process that we're within, and so these are the next steps that we're taking, and, you know, X, Y, and Z, at least we can show them that we're engaged and listening with, on, you know, from any feedback they're giving us, and we can show the progress on that.
Yeah, be happy to do that.
Wasn't it
Yeah.
like it was about the turnaround time of approval? Wasn't that like one of the big caveats?
Yeah, that's one of them, and there's a quick turnaround, once an application has been submitted. So, but yeah, there are some other factors in there, but yeah, certainly one of them.
Anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns, or things that they'd like to see on next month's agenda? No? Okay. All right, well, I guess everybody gets 15 minutes of their day back. Appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. Look forward to talking to you all next month.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thank y'all.
Take
Thanks
care.
again for the good speaker.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Thanks. Bye.